Hi, I'm Chad with Move Forward Guitar. This lesson is from our series CAGED Theory. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about dominant 7th CAGED chords. First off, if you like all the diagrams for this series, including the diagrams for this lesson, you can download our free e-guide, CAGED Theory. But I am working on it as I'm filming this lesson, so it might not be available as you're watching this lesson. If it is available, a link will pop up on the screen that'll allow you to download it. And like I said, it's free, so there's no reason not to download it when it is available. This is part 13 from our series CAGED Theory. If you'd like to go back and start at the beginning, you can click the link on the screen. So now you know how to find major 7th CAGED chords, I'm going to show you how to find dominant 7th CAGED chords. So if we were to take the basic open position major CAGED chords, which are on your screen right now, and turn those into open position dominant 7th chords, they would look like this. So now you'd have C7, A7, G7, E7, and D7. And these are all very common dominant 7th open chords, so if you don't know them, you definitely want to learn them. So now I'm going to show you, just like we've been doing, how to take these in open position and turn them into movable chords. So if we were to start with the C7 open chord, it would look like this. And like I said, this is a very common chord, so learn it if you don't know it. When it's in open position, you can leave this one string open, but to turn this into a movable chord, we need to take this one note out and just block it as well. And this is still a C7 open chord. You're just leaving out this open string, but you don't need that. You'll have the same note right here. So if we were to take this and move it up half a step, now we'd have a D flat 7 chord using the C7 shape. It's not a bar chord, you're not barring anything for this voicing, and it's a D flat 7 because now your roots are in D flat instead of C. And then again, we can move this anywhere since it's a movable chord. We could move it all the way up to your lowest note being on the 10th fret, and you'd have a G7 chord using the C7 shape. So then if we move on to the next chord, which is an A chord, since we started on C, now we're on A, so we're looking at an A7 chord. This is an A7 open chord, a very common chord used all the time, so if you don't know it, definitely learn it. If you were to move this up half a step, you would end up with a B flat 7 bar chord using the A7 shape. This should say A7 right here instead of C7. And this is a very common bar chord. It's used all the time if you play dominant chords, so it's definitely an easier chord to play for bar chords, and it's definitely a very useful one to know. And then just depending where our root is, we can move this anywhere. If we move our lowest note up to the 8th fret, that would land on an F note for our root. That would give us an F7 bar chord using the A7 shape. So now we're on to G. We started with C, then A, now we're on G. So we're looking at a G7 chord. And this is a G7 open chord. Again, a very common open chord, very useful. If you don't know it, definitely learn it. If we were to move this up half a step, we would end up with an A flat 7 bar chord using the G7 shape. And just like all the G CAGED chords, this is a very hard chord to play, so not really that useful as a full shape. So we can simplify it like we've done with the other G chords, G-shaped chords. And the first thing we can do is remove the lowest note, and that would give us this shape, and that's a much easier shape to hold. And this would still be an A7 bar chord using the G7 shape, just a simplified version of it. Or we could also remove this note as well and end up with this shape. Still, it's an A flat 7 bar chord using the G7 shape. And this is a very common shape. It's used all the time if you play dominant chords. So this is definitely one worth learning that comes out of the G7 shape. So definitely learn this shape if you want to play dominant 7th chords. And then we can move this anywhere up the fretboard since it's a movable chord. If we move our lowest note up to the 7th fret, that would give us a D7 bar chord using the G7 shape because our root is on D now. And again, this is a simplified version of the G7 shape. So now we're on to the E chord. Since we've gone C, A, G, now we're on E, and we're looking at an E7 open chord. Again, this is a very common E7 open chord used all the time, so definitely learn it if you don't know it. We can move this up half a step, and now we would get an F7 bar chord using the E7 shape because now our roots are on F. And this is a very common bar chord for a dominant 7th chord. It's a very useful one. So again, definitely learn it if you don't know it. And then we can move this anywhere. If we move our lowest note up to the 8th fret, that would land our roots on C, so we'd have a C7 bar chord using the E7 shape. Now we're on our last chord, which is D. We've gone through C, A, G, E. Now we're on the D chord. So we're looking at a D7 open chord right now. Again, this D7 is a very common open chord that's on your screen, so definitely learn if you don't know it. If you move that up half a step, you'd end up with an E flat 7 chord used in the D7 shape. It's not a bar chord, you're not barring anything. But now our root is on E flat instead of D. Now it's a movable chord because there's no open strings. And this is a very useful common shape. And like the other ones, if you play dominant 7th chords, definitely one that you want to learn because you'll get a lot of use out of it. And this is a movable chord now, so we can move it anywhere. If we move our lowest note up to the 5th fret, our root would be on G, so we'd have a G7 chord using the D7 shape. Then we can look at these up and down the whole fretboard. I put them in the key of C, so these are all C7 CAGED chords. Here is your C shape right here. Your A shape is right here. Your G shape is right here. Your E shape is right here. And your D shape is right here. And then you're back to your C shape an octave higher. So those are dominant 7th CAGED chords. Go ahead and move on to the next lesson where I'm going to talk about the last type of 7th chords we're going to go over, which are minor 7th CAGED chords. And be sure to download the e-guide. All the diagrams are in there, and be sure to subscribe because we had at least one new lesson every day.